If you're over 40, there's a good chance you've walked into a room and forgotten why, or blanked on a name you've known for years. Most people brush this off as normal aging, or worse, an early sign of something to fear. But researchers have found something surprising. What you eat may play a far bigger role in this than most people realize. In fact, some studies suggest that up to 40% of dementia risk may be tied to modifiable factors, and diet is one of the biggest ones. There are specific foods that researchers keep coming back to, again and again, when they study people who stay sharp well into their 70s and 80s. 10 of them, to be exact. The surprising part? Food number 6 is backed by a study that found people's memory and reaction time improved in a single morning. Stay with me, because your grocery list is about to change. Here's something most people don't know about their brain. Even though it only makes up about 2% of your body weight, it uses roughly 20% of the calories you consume every day. Your brain is, quite literally, one of the hungriest organs you have. That means what you feed it matters enormously, and after 40, it starts to matter even more. This is the age when subtle changes in memory and focus often begin, not because something is wrong, but because the brain, like every other organ, experiences gradual changes over time. Researchers have spent decades studying which foods seem to support healthy brain aging, and which dietary patterns show up again and again in people who maintain sharp memory well into their later years. Two eating patterns in particular, the Mediterranean diet and what's known as the MIND diet, have become a major focus of this research, and both are built around many of the same foods. This isn't about a strict diet or giving up everything you enjoy. It's about understanding which foods deserve a more regular place on your plate, and why. By the end of this video, you'll know 10 specific foods that research links to sharper memory and slower cognitive decline, starting with one you probably already have in your refrigerator. Let's get into it. Let's start with food number 1, the food researchers mention more than almost any other, leafy greens. Spinach, kale, collards, and broccoli are packed with nutrients that matter enormously for brain health: vitamin K, lutein, folate, and beta-carotene. Research suggests these plant-based foods may help slow age-related cognitive decline, and one especially striking study followed older adults over 5 years and found that those who ate 1 to 2 servings of leafy greens daily had memory and thinking skills equivalent to someone about 11 years younger. Think about that for a moment. A daily salad or side of greens, linked to a brain that functions over a decade younger than its actual age. Researchers believe lutein, a plant pigment also found in the eye, may play a particularly important role here. It appears to accumulate in brain tissue over time and has been linked to improved brain structure and function in older adults in more recent reviews. Here's the practical part. You don't need an elaborate salad every day. A side of sautéed spinach with dinner, kale blended into a morning smoothie, or steamed broccoli alongside your usual meal is enough to build the habit. That's food number 1. But food number 2 works through a completely different pathway: your blood vessels. Food number 2 is fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel, some of the richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids, a type of healthy fat that has been directly linked to brain health in dozens of studies. Here's why this matters. Omega-3s have been linked to lower blood levels of a protein called beta-amyloid, the same protein that forms damaging clumps in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. Researchers believe this may be one reason regular fish consumption is associated with better long-term cognitive outcomes. Think of omega-3 fats as building material for your brain cells themselves. Brain cell membranes are partly made of fat, and the type of fat you consume actually becomes part of that structure, which is part of why the quality of dietary fat matters so much for cognitive health. Most guidelines suggest eating fish at least twice a week, choosing varieties lower in mercury like salmon, cod, or canned light tuna. If you're not a fan of fish, flax seeds, walnuts, and avocado offer plant-based omega-3s as an alternative, though the type found in fish is generally considered the most readily used by the brain. That's food 2. But food number 3 is one almost everyone already has in their pantry, and it might surprise you how much research exists behind it. Food number 3, of all the nuts researchers have studied for brain health, one keeps showing up in study after study: walnuts. Walnuts are especially high in a type of omega-3 fat called alpha-linolenic acid, along with compounds linked to lower oxidative stress and inflammation, both of which affect how well brain cells function over time. A study out of UCLA linked higher walnut consumption to improved scores on cognitive testing. One particularly interesting study from the University of Reading found that participants who ate walnuts as part of their breakfast had faster reaction times and better memory performance later in the day, compared to those who ate a more typical breakfast of cereal and yogurt. That's a meaningful finding, a single breakfast choice showing measurable effects on memory just hours later. Here's the practical guidance: a small daily handful, roughly a quarter cup, appears to be enough to gain the benefit. Walnuts are easy to add to oatmeal, yogurt, salads, or simply eaten on their own as a snack. That's food 3. But food number 4 takes us out of the pantry and into something you might already drink every morning. Food number 4. Berries are some of the most antioxidant-dense foods available, and that matters enormously for the brain. Blueberries, strawberries, and other berries are rich in flavonoids, natural plant pigments responsible for their vibrant colors, which research shows may help improve memory. These compounds help protect brain cells from oxidative damage, the kind of cellular wear and tear that builds up gradually with age and has been linked to memory-impairing conditions, including dementia. Picture your brain cells like a garden exposed to the elements every day. Oxidative stress is like weather wearing away at that garden slowly over time. Antioxidants act like a protective layer, helping to shield what's healthy from further damage. Berries are also relatively low in sugar compared to many fruits, which makes them an easy daily addition without much downside. Frozen berries work just as well nutritionally as fresh ones, which makes this an easy habit to maintain year-round. A daily serving, about 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup added to breakfast, yogurt, or eaten on their own, is a simple, low-effort way to build this habit. That's food 4. But food number 5 brings us to something you'd typically find drizzled over a salad. Food number 5, olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, is a cornerstone of both the Mediterranean and Mind diets, two of the most well-researched eating patterns for brain health. Olive oil is known for its anti-inflammatory properties and is rich in antioxidants and monounsaturated fatty acids, a type of healthy fat that supports cognitive function. Research on the Mediterranean diet, which relies heavily on olive oil as its primary fat source, has repeatedly linked it to a lower risk of cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. One dietitian describes the Mind diet as essentially a combination of the Mediterranean and DASH diets, taking the brain protective elements of each. Both emphasize olive oil as the primary cooking fat, replacing butter and more processed oils. The practical shift here is simple: using olive oil in place of butter or heavily processed vegetable oils for cooking, and drizzling it over vegetables, salads, or whole grains rather than reaching for creamy, processed dressings. A couple of tablespoons a day, used in cooking or as a dressing, is generally considered a reasonable target based on the research. That's food 5. But food number 6 comes with one of the most specific and surprising findings on this entire list. Food number 6, whole grains like oats, quinoa, whole grain couscous, and brown rice may not sound exciting, but they play a quietly essential role in brain function. Here's why. Brain cells run almost entirely on glucose, and unlike muscle cells, they can't store much of it for later. That means your brain needs a steady, consistent supply of glucose throughout the day. Complex carbohydrates found in whole grains provide exactly that: a slow, sustained release of glucose, rather than the rapid spike and crash that comes from refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Whole grains are also high in folate, a B vitamin directly tied to memory function, and one of the same nutrients found abundantly in leafy greens. Practically, this means choosing oats over sugary cereal, whole grain bread over white bread, and brown rice or quinoa over heavily processed white rice. The swap itself matters more than the exact grain you choose. The goal is simply steadier blood sugar and glucose delivery to the brain throughout the day. That's food 6. But food number 7 is one people are often surprised even qualifies as brain food. Food number 7. Eggs are often overlooked in conversations about brain health, but they deserve a spot on this list. Eggs are an excellent source of high-quality protein, which the brain needs to produce neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers, like serotonin and dopamine, that allow brain cells to communicate with each other and with the rest of the body. Egg yolks are also one of the richest natural sources of choline, a nutrient involved in memory and cell structure that many adults don't get enough of. Choline is considered a building block for acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter directly tied to memory and learning. Some researchers believe adequate choline intake becomes more important as we age, since the brain's demand for building and maintaining these chemical messengers doesn't slow down the way some other bodily processes do. 1 or 2 eggs most mornings, prepared however you prefer, scrambled, boiled, or as an omelette with vegetables, is a simple, protein-rich way to work this nutrient into your routine without needing to overhaul your entire breakfast. That's food 7. But food number 8 might be the most versatile food on this entire list. Food number 8, avocados bring together several of the nutrients we've already discussed on this list, all in one food. They're rich in monounsaturated fats, the same heart-healthy and brain-healthy fat found in olive oil, along with meaningful amounts of vitamin E, an antioxidant linked to protecting brain cells from oxidative stress. Avocados also provide a plant-based source of omega-3 fatty acids, making them a useful option for anyone who doesn't eat much fish. Unlike many other fat sources, avocados are also high in fiber, which supports steady blood sugar, tying back to the same glucose stability principle we discussed with whole grains. Stable blood sugar throughout the day is connected to more consistent energy and focus, something people often notice more as they get older. Half an avocado a few times a week, added to toast, salads, or a smoothie, is enough to build this into a regular habit without needing much effort or preparation. That's food 8. But food number 9 brings a completely different flavor and a surprising amount of research behind it. Food number 9, we already covered walnuts specifically, but nuts and seeds as a broader category deserve their own mention, because the research extends well beyond just one type. Almonds, pumpkin seeds, and flax seeds all contain meaningful amounts of vitamin E, magnesium, and healthy fats, each tied to brain function in different ways. Vitamin E is an antioxidant that helps reduce stress on brain cells, and studies have connected it to improved cognitive performance. Magnesium, meanwhile, supports neuronal function and synaptic plasticity, essentially, your brain's ability to form and strengthen the connections involved in learning and memory. Flax seeds in particular offer a plant-based source of omega-3 fats for anyone looking to diversify beyond walnuts and fish. A small daily portion, about a quarter cup total, mixed or on their own, is a simple way to layer several of these nutrients into your day at once. They also make an easy on-the-go snack. And food number 10, the final food on this list, ties several of the previous ones together. Food number 10, rounding out this list, are legumes, chickpeas, black beans, lentils, and similar foods that are a staple of both the Mediterranean and Maine diets. Legumes are an excellent source of complex carbohydrates and folate, the same memory-supporting B vitamin found in leafy greens and whole grains. This makes them one of the more efficient foods on this list, since they combine steady glucose delivery with a nutrient directly tied to memory function, all in one plant-based food. Legumes are also rich in fiber and plant-based protein, making them a useful substitute for some of the red meat and processed foods that research generally associates with a higher risk of cognitive decline when eaten frequently. A simple way to build this habit is adding a serving of beans, lentils, or chickpeas to soups, salads, or grain bowls a few times a week, rather than treating them as an occasional side dish. That's all 10 foods. Notice something important here: these foods aren't a strict, complicated diet plan. They're the foundation of two well-studied eating patterns, the Mediterranean diet and the Maine diet, both of which emphasize vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, fish, and legumes, while limiting saturated fat and highly processed foods. You don't need to eat all 10 foods every single day to see potential benefits. Research on these dietary patterns suggests that consistency over months and years matters far more than perfection on any individual day. Think of this less as a checklist and more as a general direction to lean your everyday choices toward. A good place to start: build one meal a day around 2 or 3 of these foods. A breakfast with eggs, berries, and a side of whole grains. A lunch with leafy greens, olive oil, and legumes. A dinner featuring fatty fish alongside vegetables. It's also worth remembering that diet is only one part of the picture. Sleep, physical activity, social connection, and mental engagement all play meaningful roles in cognitive health as well. Food isn't a replacement for any of these, it's one piece working alongside them. And as always, if you have specific health conditions, take medications, or have concerns about your memory, it's worth discussing your diet with your doctor before making major changes. Your brain has been working for you every single day of your life. Giving it the right fuel, starting today, is one of the simplest things you can do for your long-term memory and independence. Pick just one food from this list and add it to your plate this week. Small, consistent choices are what the research keeps pointing back to. If you found this helpful, subscribe for more simple, science-backed tips to help you stay healthy, active, and independent for years to come. Which of these 10 foods surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. Growing older is inevitable. But how you age is influenced by the choices you make every day. Here's to a sharper mind and a healthier life, starting now.